went on Tucker last week, and that's my third time with Tucker, which was really amazing. He's just such an amazing individual. And with the midst of all of this stuff going on, I was really honored that he brought me on to talk about. I had, and those of you that know my story, Easter Sunday in 2020, the New York Times printed my social security number with my congressional ID and had it online on their online version for several hours before taking it down. And this has wreaked havoc in my life financially, as you can imagine. People trying to open mortgages and open cards, people doxed me, it was horrible. So I took action and did a legal suit against New York Times. The New York Times, I lost because the judge said, oh, well, it's, in the public interest for them to print your social security number. So I thought that was the end of that. I lost. I was sad, but that's that. Well, then I didn't know this, but just like, when you do a defamation lawsuit, privacy suits can be subject to anti-SLAPP. It's very, very rare, very rare. And of course, New York Times slapped me with an anti-SLAPP, is what they call it, and wanted attorney's fees, which are upwards close to $71,000. Or they would seize all my assets and garnish my wages. And I'm not a wealthy person. So, I could be facing, bankruptcy if I can't come up with that money. And the New York Times is pressuring. And they pressured right in the same week that Matt Gaetz said with Marjorie Taylor Greene that I would be testifying in Congress about what Joe Biden did to me when I was a staffer. So I wanted to share with you my Tucker interview. It's about 4 minutes, and then kind of close out the show and just talk about a few more things and take any questions that anyone has. If that works, Reef, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Okay, let's go.
Neoliberal establishment has decided it can't win arguments. Nobody wants what they're selling at all, so why even bother to convince anybody? So instead, they're going right to force, and you're seeing that all over our country. And one of the ways they're inflicting force on people, inflicting pain, is through civil suits. Bring them to civil court, because anyone can file a lawsuit. And so there are a lot of well-funded lawsuits trying to shut people up or punish them for stepping out of line. And here's the latest example. This has not gotten enough coverage. So TaraReade once worked for Joe Biden. He sexually assaulted her, and she made possibly the mistake of saying so out loud. You're not allowed to do that. So in retaliation against her, the New York Times posted her social security number on her website. Can you imagine the ramifications of that? So TaraReade sued the New York Times because you can't put people's social security numbers on a website. But a federal judge has now ruled against TaraReade and said that she has to pay the legal fees of the New York Times. So they're still trying to crush her. And we think it's wrong. She joins us now. Thanks so much for coming on. Did I misstate any of that? I mean, it seems like you came out and accused the sitting president of a sex crime, and we've spoken at great length about this on the air, and I don't think there's any question that it happened. You said so at the time, and now they're trying to hurt you for saying that. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes, this is just one of the many things that they've done, to try to silence me. But yeah, the lawsuit that I filed was because on the first story that they did, the New York Times, and they used me as basically a whipping post all of 2020 to try to silence and discredit me. But the first story was on Easter Sunday, and I was woken up very early in the morning by a friend who lived back east and said, hey, the online story on New York Times has your congressional ID showing your social security number. We need to get it down. It took a few hours. We got it down, and they did comply with taking it down, but it was very awful. So I did try to file a lawsuit. I lost. The judge ruled that it was in the public interest to print it, and I then was slapped with attorney's fees from New York Times, upwards close to over $71,000. So. Yeah.
So you are not a rich person, I know from our conversations.
No.
So just two quick questions. How is it in the public's interest for the New York Times to publish your social security number of all private things?
Well, suddenly, I guess there was a great interest in freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. So freedom of the press would be the impetus for that, and sort of a more of a legal argument. And I don't want to bore your audience with all of that, but there's been different ways that the, Biden administration has come after me. They've come after me with the DOJ, with sealed warrants on my Twitter, which are of record, and there's been, you know, a little bit of press about that. They took my, you know, communications on Twitter and all of that. So yeah, it's been, you know, watching Joe Biden take a wrecking ball to my, I've been experiencing this wrecking ball to my life, but now I've been watching the last couple of years take a wrecking ball to the United States. Including, you know, the proxy war that Russia and NATO is, and U.S. is fighting against Russia, you know, and upwards of $100 billion going over there when we have dire circumstances here. So all of those things that I talked about, that I criticized Joe Biden about, besides the awful experience of being sexually assaulted by him when I was a Senate staffer in 1993, you know, people are seeing just the true Joe Biden of how corrupt this regime is. And if there needs to be any regime change, it doesn't need to be in other countries. It needs to happen here. Now,
I agree.
So,
I agree.
Yeah.
We're seeing how cruel and ruthless they are. And not only they don't believe all women, they will hurt women who disobey. And you're a perfect example.
And further, Tucker, you know, the New York Times has become, the legacy media has become like an arm of the Biden administration, like the DOJ and the FBI. I mean, look at what just happened to Matt Taibbi, who testified about, you know, the different ways that they were trying to suppress U.S. citizen speech and using taxpayer money to do it and control the conversation and control the narrative. He got visited by an IRS agent the day of his testimony. So
they send the IRS to your house. Yeah. No, I'm not. So we're all waiting for that, and I know that you are. Well, you're living it now. TaraReade, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well,
So there you have it. Yeah, what'd you think, Reef?
I mean, pretty ballsy to call for regime change. I'm down. You know,
Tucker was down.
Tucker agrees. Yeah, like sure.
Yep.
You know,
and what's remarkable is the next day you have the indictment of Trump, which has really shattered a lot of people's belief in the justice system. Because let's face it, you know, as everyone knows, I was a lifetime Democrat. Then now I'm an independent. I won't ever vote Democrat again. And, you know, as an independent, we're in a party. This isn't even about Democrats and Republicans. This is about abuse of power. And what Biden did and the administration is doing is abuse of power. And this brag is kind of again, another extension of the Democratic elites machine that they're taking after political opposition. And Donald Trump was doing really well in the polls. He was going to win the primary nomination. And that's a threat they don't want. They want somebody like DeSantis, who's more, you know, he's more, if you will, establishment.
Yeah. As a Floridian, I can tell you right now, even Floridians wouldn't vote that guy if Trump was running, you know? So